Okay, so this is part two of my book haul. So, this part of my book haul goes into more contemporary or modern works of fiction that I recently picked up. I've tried to sort these by genre rather loosely. So, hopefully, that will help as I go through them. And again, I will be describing a little bit about what each of these books is about. So, the first set of books that I picked up are all loosely some type of science fiction. Mostly, I'm realizing dystopian. So, we'll see how that goes. The first book on this stack is by Robert A. Heinlein, which is Strangers in a Strange Land. I read last year A Door into Summer by Robert A. Heinlein, and I really liked his writing and his story and pacing, so I am excited to read another work by him. What is this book about? Raised by Martians on Mars, Valentine Michael Smith is a human who has never seen another member of his species. Sent to Earth, he is a stranger who must learn what it is to be a man, but his own beliefs and his powers far exceed the limits of humankind. As he teaches grokking and water sharing, he also inspires a transformation that will alter Earth's inhabitants forever. So, my understanding is that we kind of follow him as he takes an objective view, if you will, of what humanity is like from another person who is human but has never lived with humans on Earth as they exist during this time period. So I think this will be a really interesting view of sort of trying to step outside ourselves and view our actions and motivations. Yeah, and apparently this edition is the original uncut version of this. So I don't know why at some point it would have been edited or edited down, but I'm looking forward to reading it. And this is a super nice floppy edition, so that's nice too. I picked up another sort of, I guess, dystopian novel. It might be considered a bit more feminist than anything else, but this book was actually recommended to me by a longtime childhood friend who I'm in a book club with, and I have loved every single book that she has recommended. So I cannot wait to read this. And that book is Egalia's Daughters, or A Satire of the Sexes by Gerd Brantenberg. When she told me about this book, I was like, yeah, I want to read that. But basically, this is just a place where gender roles are reversed. The whim or the women, as we would know them, all go to work and are the breadwinners, and the men whim, you can guess who those are, stay home and take care of the children and do the household chores. I love satires. I think they really make us think about things that otherwise we just accept in society, and I can't wait to read Egalia's Daughters. I also picked up Ice Trilogy by Vladimir Sorokin. Ice Trilogy is a takes place in 1908 in deep Siberia, where some sort of alien object falls to Earth. The basic idea is they go on this adventure to basically collect all the people who are desirable and bring them together no matter what. So the themes in this book already just sound like they're going to be very, very thought provoking, and I'm very interested in reading this book, and I hope it gets picked soon. And if you've been watching my TBR videos, you know that every time I pull the letter X, it just goes downhill from there. And so I did myself a favor and I picked up a book that starts with X. And this is by Rian Hughes. It is a novel. The novel is XX or 20. At some point, it occurred to me like that is the Roman numeral for 20. So I wonder if that's actually the name of the book. But I don't think I've ever heard anybody refer to it in that manner. So I'm going to have to look that up. But this is basically a book that, I mean, you can see it a little bit of it there, is written in all sorts of interesting formatting. It is a sci-fi. And what is this book about? Well, it's supposed to be sort of a first encounter. Basically, an observatory in England has detected a mysterious signal from interstellar space or interstellar communication. And the rest of the book is trying to sort of solve that mystery and figure out what's going on. But I know there's supposed to be like newspaper clippings and articles in here, that kind of thing. This book is supposed to be really well researched. And I have never read a book that has like uses unique forms of formatting to tell a story. So I cannot wait. I have had this book on my TBR for a few years now. I'm excited, and the second I pull a X, like it's going on because this is the only book I own whose letter will start with X. And fun fact, it is also a mammoth, which means it's over 800 pages long. So it fills a lot of like anticipated reading tropes for me. Okay, That was the end of science fiction. So moving on, I'm going to go into some of the more modern classics that I picked up. That was sort of the best way I could distinguish them. Most of these books are literary fiction of some type, but they were written maybe like 50 years ago. So typically somewhere between the 40s and the 70s, I would say. The first two books that I picked up are both by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Slozhenitsyn. I'm really butchering that name. I apologize. And I picked up both The First Circle as well as One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. Um, and this is the 50th anniversary edition. I have heard a lot of really good things about this book. A lot of people seem to like this and recommend it, even if you've read nothing by him. It is also a very short book. I also have Cancer Ward by him. I'm not sure which one I'm going to start with. I might start with the shorter book, just to give me a flavor and go from there, or I might do publication order. It's always hard to tell. If you have a recommendation between his three books, these two and Cancer Ward, let me know which one you would start with. So what are these books about? One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. So my understanding is this is supposed to just sort of recount his life and I guess what it's actually like to be in a Siberian labor camp is the premise of this book. And then, like I said, I also have The First Circle, and I will just read one of the blurbs that's on the back here that I think is really catching. And it says, "It is the tone of this huge book that is so marvelously new. It has no villains in it, which many people may think shows incredible tolerance. It shows something else, really, that when the world is reduced to guiltless criminals, freaks, narcs, nuts, and policemen, a loud laugh is more crushing than a howl of agony." I've heard there's a lot of really unique features in this book, so we'll see. And it was also the winner of the Nobel Prize. Well, the author was the winner of the Nobel Prize in 1970. Continuing on with an author who I bought two books by, I also bought two works by Daphne du Maurier. I read Rebecca last year, and that really got me into wanting to read more of her works. So I picked up this story collection by Daphne du Maurier called Don't Look Now. I'm pretty sure I got this one for free. I mean, look how beat up this copy is. I'm pretty sure it was free. And I also picked up The Scapegoat, which is a novel of impersonation. So this is, like I said, a story collection by Daphne du Maurier. So I'm interested in reading some of her shorter works. And then The Scapegoat has very interesting premise. The Scapegoat is basically a story where an Englishman and a Frenchman run into each other and they realize they're doppelgangers and they kind of, talk to one another, but one of them shares a bit more of his life than the other. And it's not until they part that he begins to realize that this may be a problem. So I think ultimately this is a story of like stolen identity. So I'll be really interested to see like how that works out in the story. I'm hoping that based on Rebecca, that there will be a lot of intrigue and suspense and drama and sort of thrills and spills, if you will. I was able to find a used copy of Wallace Stegner's Angle of Repose. I'm just really interested in those types of books that explore, like, have people thinking about and exploring their past. My only concern with this book is it does sound like it's going to be a bit of a person in a locked room just thinking to themselves, which I have mixed feelings about, and I feel like sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. I'm hoping it will work in this case. I next picked up the book Silence by Shusako Endo. This is a book that has been on my TBR list also for a couple of years. It is a work of Japanese literature, which I am always interested in, and it is described as telling the story of a 17th century Portuguese priest in Japan at the height of the fearful persecution of the small Christian community. I don't remember when I first heard about this book, but it has been something that I keep seeing and wanting to give a try. So I was excited when I found a very inexpensive used copy of it, and I went ahead and purchased it. So that was it for my modern classics. I also picked up two works of nonfiction that have been on my TBR wish list for a while. The first book is The Woman They Could Not Silence, the shocking story of a woman who dared to fight back. This is written by Kate Moore, and this is the story of Elizabeth Packard, who was a housewife and mother of six, and who ends up having to fight her own battle. It covers the story of this particular woman and how she is basically sent to an insane asylum. Basically, during the 1860s, and it talks about how women could be locked up and declared insane by their family members, or in her case, I believe it was her husband, for basically just speaking out and or disagreeing, or whatever reason it was convenient to lock her up. So it discusses her experience and how she would not basically be silent about what was going on in her experience, and how she kept, sort of making an outcry about what was going on. And I believe also discusses the other women that she meets in this insane asylum who are basically anything but insane. I also picked up The House of Government by Yuri Slezkine. This came up in my Mammoth TBR video as a mammoth that was, or a book that's over 800 pages that starts with the letter H. And just doing that video reminded me how long I've been waiting to have a copy of this book. The thing that has me interested in this book is that it is described as unlike any other book about the Russian Revolution and the Soviet experiment, but it's written in the tradition of Tolstoy's War and Peace or Vasily Grossman's Life and Fate, or also the Gulag Archipelago. It's a gripping narrative, tells the chilling true story of an enormous Moscow apartment building where Soviet leaders and their families lived until hundreds of these Bolshevik true believers were led one by one to prison or to their deaths in Stalin's purges. So I think it's a combination of the history and the story that this tells about sort of this the Soviet Revolution and the government at that time, and also just this structure and the way that this story is supposed to be told. So it is a piece of nonfiction. There are pictures, but I'm hoping the formatting of this book and the way it is written makes it a good read. And this book is humongous. So, and the print is super tiny. So this is likely a book that I will pick up one month and read over the course of a couple of months, but we'll see. Okay, next I have the stack that I got of more contemporary reads, or romance, those kind of genres. So that's for all you people out there who like that. I do read some of that as well. I did pick up The Hummingbird's Daughter. I realized that at one point I accidentally gave away a used copy of this that I had. I think I got that copy free, so that's okay. So I did finally decide to repurchase it. And this is by Luis Alberto Urrea. And this is a book that is supposed to have a lot of magical realism in it, which I do like, but I'm finding that there's only some times that I like it, and I haven't figured out yet what those times are. So hopefully this book will help me figure that out. And this is described as miracles and passion abound in this mesmerizing novel, everywhere hailed as a masterwork. The story of a young woman whose gifts as a healer lend her the aura of a saint and who must come to terms with a surprising destiny as all of Mexico rises in revolution, crying out her name. So, yeah, sounds great to me. And as a recommendation by a friend, I found a used and inexpensive copy of The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. I have heard really good things about this book, and I have had a couple of people recommend it to me. So when I found it at my used bookstore, and it was on sale on top of the used price, I was like, okay, here's my turn to buy it, because it was one that I thought I'd just eventually have to wait and get out of the library. But I've had it so highly recommended that I was happy to buy an edition in the hopes that I'd really like it and want to own it. Next, I have a novel bookstore by Laurence Cosse. So I have never heard of this book before, and I don't tend to look up ratings of books before reading them, but I read this one paragraph about this book, and I was like, I need to give this a try. And I will read that paragraph to you right now. It says, mystery abounds, but a novel bookstore is no everyday mystery. The victims here are not members of the underworld, toughs or thugs, but mild, meek, and apparently ordinary people. In the eyes of their aggressors, they are guilty of only one crime, expressing their taste in literature. A book about books that's also a mystery? Yeah. So apparently the people in this book are being knocked off by someone who doesn't like their opinions on books. I'm fascinated. I don't know about you, but I want to read more. I picked up this beautiful edition of a couple of works by Paulo Coelho. This includes The Valkyries, Fifth Mountain, and Veronica Decides to Die. And look how gorgeous this is. I've been wanting to read something by Paulo Coelho, and I had some book credit at my local bookstore after doing an unhaul. Sorry, I didn't film it. Also, from my used bookstore, I picked up this nice edition of Barbara Erskine's Lady of the Hay. I have heard really interesting things. There are people who are really into historical romance. I heard that this was like sort of a surprise book in that genre, not so recently published, but basically it is one of those sort of time travel historical romance. I want to almost say it that maybe somebody mentioned this was kind of like the original Outlander before Outlander. I don't know, but I do know that this woman lives in the current time frame that this book was written. Does it say when? No, but then she somehow gets transported back to the 12th century England. Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie uh, Mackenzie? Mackenzie? Anyway, I know that when this book was first published and came out, it was in sensation. I'm looking forward to reading it. It's just a very simple story, which is part of the reason that I hadn't wanted to buy it was because, again, I'm a cheapo. I don't like spending exorbitant amount of money on books that will take me seconds to read. Ooh, somebody left their Amazon gift card in here. Oh, it says you're our lucky buyer. Wow. Is this actually a usable gift card that they just shoved in here? We will have to check that out and find out because that's cool. Never know what you're going to find. Anyway, so I was super happy just to get this book, but now it's paid for this and pretty much everything else. If there's $10 on there, it pretty much pays for everything that I got on that thrifting shop. So a book that I bought brand new was What You Are Looking For Is in the Library. And I think this is the most recently published book that I bought. This is by Michiko Aoyama, I believe is how it's pronounced. Probably not. But this story is just kind of like this one, a book about books, and just sounds like all the warm, cozy happiness I could possibly want. But this book is supposed to be about just sort of healing and helping people, as well as the power of books and just how important a book recommendation can be. And I think that just sounds so charming. So I can't wait to read it. Okay, and last stack, but certainly not least, I have a small stack here of books that I purchased that were literary fiction. The first book here is another book that I have had on my TBR for a very long time, and I was super excited. I found it at my thrift store again. I I want to say I need to go back there more often, but I really need to not go there because they really do have a good selection, and I really could pick a lot of books off their shelf. They also have a huge fantasy collection there. The book that I got is My Life as a Rat by Joyce Carol Oates. So, my understanding is not a plot spoiler that she testifies against her own brothers and then gets exiled by her family. Joyce Carol Oates is, I feel like, pretty well known for writing about very controversial hot topics. So I'm very interested in reading this book. The topic sounds really profound to me. However, Joyce Carol Oates also has a very interesting writing style, so I'm not sure I'm going to get along with that. So we'll see. I picked up as a surprise this book, Cities of the Salt by Abdelrahman Munif. I love reading stories that take place in different parts of the world, in different communities that are preferably written in own voices, just because that gives a different narrative and a different perspective than what I am used to. And the story of an oasis community sort of being displaced by oil barons, if you will, is a story that really fascinates me. After a little bit of online book discussion, I decided that I wanted to read more of Italo Calvino. I had read If on a Winter's Night a Traveler last year, or at least attempted to read it, and found it very strange. But I did get a good word that not all of his writing is like that. So I found at a very inexpensive price this hardback edition of the complete Cosme Comics, which is a story collection by him. So I thought that might be a better place for me to start. I had been wanting to pick up a copy of the Book of Disquiet, so that was a book that I was specifically looking for there, and I found this edition of it. Look at this edition, guys. This book is gorgeous. I was happy. It was a book that was off my TBR, and yeah. Um, this book is translated from the Portuguese and is written by Fernando Pessoa. Pessoa? Pessoa. Book of Disquiet is basically supposed to be a somewhat autobiographical or diary of just his thoughts as told through basically most of the time through a bookkeeper, but is just supposed to have him exploring all sorts of eternal questions and thoughts about life. So it's formatted sort of in a diary format. So little sections to think about. So I definitely think this is a book that I will read slowly and just ponder each of the sections as I come across them. I hope I enjoy it. That format, that type of book is can be a hit or miss for me, but I'm really hoping it's a hit. So that brings me to the end of all the books that I purchased. That is it for me today. So thank you if you have made it through this whole video and the previous video. I hope you found some books that you would enjoy. If you like these types of videos, give it a thumbs up or leave a comment below so that I know. And let me know if you've read any of these books and if I should prioritize any of them. And I will add them to my acorn jar, which is on this shelf right there. And those are just books that are recommended to me that I prioritize when choosing my TBR each month. Well, most months if I get the acorn jar. You got to watch the video to kind of understand. But anyway, you can recommend any of these books or let me know which ones you'd like or you'd like me to read just because it sounds interesting. And hopefully that'll come up sooner than later. So that's it. I will talk to you later. Bye.